Using n8n to build and sell a SaaS is a massive opportunity for a one-person business, but there's one giant roadblock that stops almost everyone: that notoriously confusing sustainable use license policy. I see posts every week in my community from builders asking what is and what is not allowed under that sustainable use, and now Jan, the founder of n8n, has finally set the record straight. In a recent forum answer, he clarified these specific rules that have tripped people up for so long. So in the next 5 minutes, we're going to clear up all the confusion. I'll break down exactly what you can sell as a SaaS product whilst paying almost nothing for n8n in the backend, and one specific setup that will require a commercial license. So let's get straight into it. So can you run n8n as a backend to your SaaS using only your own company credentials on the backend, i.e. you're not passing in user credentials? So you have a user sign in on your front end that you built using something like Lovable, and then we use API requests and webhooks inside n8n as the backend that receives data, processes it, and passes data back. But the key here is we only use our own credentials on the backend. And does it have different licensing implications if they're signing in using Google OAuth or Apple on the front end? Can multiple users sign in? The simple answer is actually, it doesn't matter how those users sign in. That doesn't make a difference. As long as we're using only your company credentials on the back end, this is permitted under the internal business use cases or sustainable use license for n8n. So to bring this to life, I've got some clear examples of where you might use this in a SaaS product. First, we've got the social media scheduler. So if a user is on your front end and they're requesting a tweet to be generated, n8n is using an AI agent or LLM chain in the backend using your OpenRouter or OpenAI key, and it returns the text back to your app for that user to copy. That's absolutely allowed. If we have an AI blog writer where a user requests a post on a certain topic, we do a bunch of things in the background to generate that blog post, keyword research, etc., using only our third-party API keys, and we return that fully written blog post to the user for them to copy and paste into the app. That is also allowed. And then finally, we have an email assistant where a user posts in an email that they want rewriting, n8n rewrites it using your OpenRouter key and returns that draft in the front end for your user to then take and copy and paste and send that as an email. That is also permitted. So how does that work then when you're actually connecting to a user's credentials in n8n on the back end? And is that permitted? So we still have the same front end SaaS here. We're sending our API requests back and forth to n8n, but actually inside n8n for this example, we want n8n to connect to multiple users' Google Mails. So we're sending in their Google Mail credentials or their tokens so we can connect to their Google Mails on the back end and actually manage their Google Mails and reply inside their inboxes or create drafts. And a crucial difference here is like we're actually sending the user's third-party services accounts into n8n. And we're, for example, managing user A's Gmail, user B's Gmail, user C's Gmail in there. Now, this use case requires an embed license because we're connecting to multiple users' accounts. And it doesn't matter whether you're doing that via the inbuilt nodes like Gmail, etc., or you're actually doing that by sending in OAuth tokens from your own external database and passing them into n8n at runtime. It's treated exactly the same. It matters what you use n8n for, not where those tokens are stored. So if instead you're using HTTP requests, passing in OAuth tokens, and not using the inbuilt n8n nodes, it doesn't matter. It's still connecting to a user's third-party service using n8n, which is not allowed and needs an embed license. However, there is a way around this. You can actually still use n8n as part of your SaaS app if you connect to a user's credentials outside of n8n. So if we're just taking that step of connecting to the user's Gmail and putting that outside of n8n somewhere, we can still process the data inside n8n. That is allowed. So if my SaaS connects to the user's Gmail elsewhere, but n8n process the data internally, is this permitted? Yes, it's okay. If your SaaS does it somewhere else and n8n is not making that connection to that third-party service, it is permitted as internal use. So we might have specific code that connects to a third-party service, and then we push that data into n8n. That is still allowed. So let's compare those two directly. For the social media scheduler, if the workflow is connecting to the user's Twitter account and posting tweets on their behalf, not allowed. You need an embed license. However, if the workflow generates the tweet text, but sends it to an external service that manages that connection, like Post is, or you're doing that through your own code, which sits externally to n8n, then this is actually allowed. Or for the AI blog writer, the workflow connects to users' WordPress sites directly via n8n. You need an embed license. But actually, if we're just returning the blog to the user and then enabling them to connect to their WordPress site outside of n8n, then this is allowed. Or for the email assistant, the workflow connects to users' Gmail accounts. You already know that we're not allowed to do that. But what about if your custom front end fetches the email and sends the text to n8n, n8n generates the reply and returns the text to your app, which then connects back to your draft email inbox? This is allowed. So the crucial distinction is it matters what you use n8n for. If you're using n8n to connect to users' accounts, you need the embed license. However, if you take that functionality and put that externally or use a third-party service, then you are allowed under the sustainable use license. Now, of course, there are exceptions to every rule, and Jan has specified a few exceptions here. Do we have to have an embed license to just try something like a quick MVP? And Jan has said it's totally okay for testing. You can for sure create an MVP and test it using n8n. They don't want to block that. But as soon as it's available for public launch or external users, then you'll need that embed license. However, he has explicitly stated that we should, however, probably consider adding something in the future to allow smaller deployments to do that no matter what. So it's still open in the future as to what actually n8n decide around creating smaller deployed apps without having that embed license. But right now, if it's externally accessible, then it needs an embed license. And that's if it's externally accessible and connecting to users' accounts, to be clear. So the other exception was all to do with, is the enterprise license enough, or do I need an actual embed license? Because a lot of commercial users actually use the enterprise license for n8n. And Jan has actually explicitly stated that they're working on an update so that the enterprise license will be sufficient to connect to multiple users' accounts in the back end of n8n, but this will still only apply as long as you're not giving the user n8n itself, i.e. white labeling n8n, and the n8n UI is not exposed to the user. So you will be able to do all of the things that we said you'd need an embed license for with the enterprise license in Q1 2026. Just waiting on updates now from the n8n team. So I'm just going to leave these key use cases on the screen now for the social media scheduler, the AI blog writer, and email assistant, so you can run through and understand exactly the nuances of difference that we've just run through for the license policy. So now that you understand that you actually can use n8n as a SaaS backend, in this next video, I'm going to show you exactly how we build one from scratch.